They resembled waves until the hatch split. Out in the open Pacific and Atlantic, low gray forms hugged the surface, all but undetectable by radar and to the naked eye. By the time the Coast Guard boards them, reality crashes in like a storm, crews wheezing on diesel smoke, bales of illegal cargo stacked around them, and one valve poised to take it all, the men, the boat, and the proof, down in a matter of minutes. Are they submarines? Not quite. They're something grimmer, stranger, and designed to vanish. These are not military ordnance or government tests. They're the new faces of international trafficking, self-sinking machines, sponsored by cartels who buy coastlines like coordinates, crossing oceans in stealth and rewriting the rules of the game forever. The hatch that swung open on June 18, 2019, in the Eastern Pacific became a moment suspended in seafaring history. That morning, the Coast Guard cutter Monroe picked up what, at first glance, resembled nothing more than a slow-moving capsule floating through the waves. It sat so low that it almost disappeared into the horizon. Dull gray, unmarked, featureless, it had no flag, no registration, no purpose, and yet its attention caught the trained eyes of lookouts who had patrolled those waters for months searching for traffickers. There was something wrong with the silhouette. Too primitive for a commercial boat, too flat for a fishing boat, and much too silent to be innocent. The cutter deployed a small pursuit boat, and from it started one of the most perilous boarding operations ever recorded on video. 2 Coast Guardsmen jumped aboard the slippery deck as the boat still bucked through the water. No rails, no holds, only a curved surface just above the water. A fall, and they'd drop into the churning wake for good. They thudded on the hatch, yelling into the gale, calling to anyone within to let them in before the sailors below pulled one lever that would send them all to the bottom. Every second was drawn out like twine, then, at last, the hatch opened. A smuggler's face appeared, peering out into the sunlight with a mixture of fear and resignation. The guardsmen pushed hard, opening the hatch wide. Within, the reality was claustrophobic. Walls, floor, ceiling, all were filled with plastic-wrapped bales of narcotics. 8 tons of drugs heaped into a space that was little larger than a garage. It was not a boat so much as it was a floating coffin filled with fumes and contraband. The action from that day on went down in Coast Guard history, helmets shiny, waves pounding, adrenaline uncut. But what few at the time realized was that the ship they had just confiscated wasn't built to withstand that collision. Had the smugglers lost their cool a couple of seconds sooner, a mere turn of a valve would have dispatched the entire edifice into the depths, leaving nothing behind. That's the way these boats are designed, not to combat or escape, but to disappear. These peculiar gray phantoms are not submarines by any Navy definition. They do not submerge to great depths or roam weeks underwater. They are in the twilight world, part boat, part submersible, gliding just beneath the waves where they can be detected by radar only with difficulty and the naked eye confuses them with flotsam. Their bottoms are painted sea gray or bleached blue to match the horizon exactly. At distance, they're invisible. On radar, ghosts. And that invisibility isn't happenstance, it's design. They're called SPSS, self-propelled semi-submersibles. Designed for one thing only, to vanish. A scuttle valve is their most dangerous attribute. It's just a rudimentary lever, but one turn and the ocean pours in. In minutes, the boat is filled, the engines expire, and all on board goes down to silence. No trail, no proof, no recovery. It's a desperation-born failsafe. Crews understand that if they get caught, the cargo is gone and their lives may be next, but if the ship sinks before it can be boarded by authorities, prosecutors have nothing to present in court. In September 2019, only 3 months since the Monroe bust, the cutter Valiant stopped another 40-foot semi-submersible with more than 12,000 pounds of drugs. The boarding crew scarcely had time to board when the vessel started to submerge. They saved the crew, extracted what they could, and saw 10,000 pounds of evidence go under the waves. For traffickers, this was triumph enough. For law enforcement, another specter. But where do these ghosts come from? Far from shipyards and dry docks, deep inside the jungles of Colombia's Pacific coast, the narco subs are born. Follow a muddy trail along the mangrove rivers and you'll find them, crude, hidden workshops covered in tarps, buzzing with the sound of generators and the chemical sting of fiberglass resin. There are no roads here. Every item of material, resin drums, diesel engines, even the food for the workers, is paddled in by canoe at night. Jungle vines conceal outlines from satellites. Construction workers work shifts, sleeping in hammocks hung over mud, sweating in the dense air as they shape fiberglass around wood frames. The hulls dry in secrecy, each piece separately, until they are pulled out to the water and sewn together like animals giving birth from the swamp. There are two primary types. The low-profile ships, or LPs, ride inches above the waterline, their decks almost invisible even in tranquil seas. The self-propelled semi-submersibles, or SPSS, float lower again, with ballast tanks that enable them to travel almost completely submerged, only a canopy riding above the surface. They can't dive deep, but they don't need to. Their strength is that they are invisible. Designs changed over the years. In 2010, Colombian authorities found a super sub, 74 feet long, carbon fiber reinforced, powered to travel 7,800 miles under its own power. It was equipped with a conning tower and diesel-electric engines, comparable to military engineering. What really amazed investigators wasn't its sophistication but the fact that it was found in a jungle clearing, constructed using hand tools and secrecy. By 2019, the boats weren't crossing the Pacific anymore. The first to cross the Atlantic was intercepted off the Galicia coast, Spain, a semi-sub. On board were 6,600 pounds of drugs and evidence that vessels constructed in the jungle could now link continents. Cartels understood the arithmetic clearly. Each sub took about $2 million to construct. But if just one shipment could get through, the profit was hundreds of millions. Worth the risk. These ships were turned into disposable commodities, one-time use stealth and greed machines. Inside, though, is where the true horror resides. Go through the small hatch, and you enter a space smaller than a hallway. The air slaps into you like a punch, hot, damp, full of diesel fumes and sweat. There is no room to stand. The floor is sticky with fuel and seawater that have spilled in transit. The crew, typically 3 or 4 men, sleep among the bales, their food restricted, their air deficient, their skin smeared in soot. They navigate by handheld GPS devices and low-end compasses, their world illuminated by one flickering bulb. Sleep occurs in shifts, strung across fuel tanks. They subsist on dry rations, drink bottled water heated by engine fire, and inhale exhaust. Trips can take weeks. In March 2023, one such boat was caught by the Colombian Navy. There were 2 dead men, killed by their own fumes, and 2 near dead inside. The vessel had been closed too tightly, they suffocated in what they created. Carbon monoxide death is silent, you simply tire and never wake. It is a harsh reality that speaks to what these subs really are, desperation-driven death traps. For years, these vessels haunted the Pacific like rumors. For each one apprehended, several escaped. But the hunters also adapted. The United States and her allies made the sky a net. The P-3 Orion, a former Navy sub-hunter, became an important tool in the fight against these semi-subs. Its radar picked up subtle imprints of hulls and heat signatures invisible to the human eye. From thousands of feet up, the Orions could spot what no one else could, a ripple where none should be, a shape that defied the waves. When a target appeared, coordinates flashed to Key West, to the Joint Interagency Task Force South, JIAP South, the nerve center for the entire operation. There, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and foreign partner country analysts monitored a live map of the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific, guiding cutters and aircraft in real time. If a ship was in the pattern of a narco sub, a cutter was sent, at times accompanied by Navy warships that had Coast Guard law enforcement detachments aboard. From the air, HC-130J Super Hercules aircraft guided the pursuit, providing visuals and following every movement. During high-speed surface pursuits, Coast Guard Hytron sharpshooters leaned out the open doors of helicopters and fired disabling rounds into outboard engines. Every apprehension was counted not in arrests alone but in pounds of poison kept off the streets. One campaign during a season under Operation Pacific Viper netted more than 40,000 pounds in a matter of weeks, a ton and a half per day removed from circulation. But nonetheless, the ocean had one harsh stipulation: if the evidence went down, the case did too. For decades, smugglers made hay from this loophole. They'd open the valve, torpedo the boat, and leave prosecutors with only photos and seawater samples. Without the drugs themselves, convictions were all but impossible. That all changed in 2008, when Congress enacted the Drug Trafficking Vessel Interdiction Act, Title 18, Section 2285. It criminalized merely operating or being on an unregistered submersible designed to avoid detection. In simple terms, even if you scuttled your vessel, you were convicted. The boat itself, its design, its stealth, its lack of nationality, constituted evidence sufficient. The first big test arrived in United States versus Valero Arroyo. Without physical cargo, the jury still convicted. The precedent was established: the ocean would no longer sweep crime under its rug. Scuttling your sub now was suicide without escape. This act transformed tactics on the high seas. No longer did boarding parties leap into half-sunk holds in an effort to salvage evidence. Now they were charged with saving lives and recording everything: the secret valves, the smuggler's controls, the asphyxiating cabin. Pictures, films, testimony, all were admissible. The sea ghosts at last had names, serial numbers, and sentences.